It's important for a lot of people to understand a little bit more information. Let's go a bit deeper into the Shirley Weber, Julie Sue, Kamala Harris items. So when you're dealing with people, even the current General AG California, Robert Bonta, you have a situation where when someone like me, a candidate and an archiver, very important, is doing something and parties are messing around, they're committing criminal items, and you bring it to their attention, you say, hey, Secretary of State is supposed to protect the process of elections. And the AG's office is also supposed to protect the people in the process of elections. It's interesting how this works. So when you have situations like a Julie Sue that starts blacklisting people's income, when you have a pandemic and then you have these people that are taking gross advantage of a situation. You have California taking, for instance, they're taking stock. They have people filling out applications, putting complaints out or claims. They take the claim forms, they go to Congress basically, or through the Division of Government, wherever it is, Secretary of Labor or whatever, and they submit and they say, hey, look, this is a list of the people who filed, we're going to need X amount of money. Zip, they get all that money. So they're hanging on to that money. So if they don't process the claims, keep in mind, they have all that money. They report other statistics at a later point in time. But they have to have the money to hand it out first, basically. So these people are sitting on it. In my case, I filled out multiple applications. They're not responding. And here it is, they're hanging on to the money. They've already turned that paperwork in. They've had the money transferred. They're committing fraud. They're just sitting on top of this money. And they're sitting on top of pallets and pallets of money. So if you hear that California had a $200 billion surplus budget, you just need to consider, well, wait a minute, how many billions of dollars of that money belong to other people that somehow effectively in the shell game of managing business and life, then basically that they're doing a juggling game. How much money are you going to have to send to this department or that department? There's this juggling game and priorities game, which changes, which some way translates out into some place there's slush funds hanging out. So they've collected money. So when I'm getting blacklisted, when $31 billion in fraud is occurring, because Julie Sue is basically blacklisting people who need the money, creating a conundrum of ways you can't get through. You're using 3 phones constantly, 24 hours a day. We're talking 3 phones a day, hour after hour after hour. We're talking day after day after day, week after week, month after month. This is the insanity they created. They have it on the news and everything, all the evidence. And you have individual evidence. I had like 300 hours, something like that. But, the thing is that it's insanely ridiculous that you step up and you go to Shirley Weber and you say, hey, man, I'm getting blacklisted here. You call up Secretary of State's office first. You work with people. You try to work with people. You can't get things done. You have to end up filing documents, demand documents. So you file a demand document, action this hour, action this day, and they don't respond. Shirley Weber doesn't respond. But she responds to the same exact address on other stuff, like an item filed by the governor's office. Oh, she responds. So this is a problem. So when you have overall situations, let me help you look at this another way. When somebody like me is a candidate and an archiver, I got a nonprofit, I'm championing the voters. I'm championing civil rights. I'm championing causes. And these parties don't want to deal with criminal violations that have occurred with government employees, for instance. At that moment, they no longer represent the people. In document, they no longer have the right to say that they represent the people. So if I represent a document, I can say I'm the candidate, I'm the archiver and or organization, and the party that in true is actually representing the people, because these parties that I am putting in basically as the defendants would be not sponsoring the best interest of the citizens. They're not defenders of the people at that point. And this occurs all over the place. This occurs with the AG's office, the Attorney General's office. This occurs with, again, with the Secretary of State, because you're supposed to have legal processing. Or the Secretary of State did legal processing for elections. And when you have somebody attacking the process of elections and you're doing processing and she's not responding, she's in dereliction of her job. And when you hear people start quoting and you're talking to people going, what's going on? We need rational communications. And they're doing nothing but quoting strange policies that have nothing to do with the Constitution of the United States. Nothing. And, so they're going to say, oh, well, it's our policy that we have to defend AG's office. Our policy, we have to defend government employees. Therefore, we have to disenfranchise all voters, abandon the Constitution of the United States, abandon national security, abandon any rapid deployment to retrieve information stolen with respect to these situations where parties have done wrongdoing, and you end up with the causes of things where you have, parties have committed burglaries. Who are? We don't know. We think they might be Russians. National security has been violated. They are not participating in the proper empirical methodologies. So they no longer have the right in court to claim that they are standing for the people. The true championship legally at that point of the people is whoever is in fact trying to represent the people. In most cases, when I do something, I would be the champion of the people. I believe I've done that several times on some filed documents. They got upset. And I said, fine, here's the argument, yada, yada, yada. And they went, right. And I won. They could not stop me from saying that I was the one actually representing the people, the people's best interest. So this is something that people have to remember, that the moment these people abandon voters, abandon protecting the process, they no longer represent the people. They're all by themselves. They're all on their own. So when we have this criminal situation of rigging elections, but the people who are supposed to be protecting the process of elections, the Secretary of State, the AG's office, they're not doing it. That's as high as you go. That's the ultimate buck stops there. Unless you got to go to the governor. Gee whiz, you're supposed to bother the governor and say, yeah, your subordinates are screwing up. Wow, I'd be so pissed off if I was the governor at anybody who says, man, you didn't take care of this properly. You let it go this far. Boy, I would really, really blow it. Finding out some of the things that these people would do, boy, I'd come unglued practically, I'd really do that. I'd lay into that. I'd lay into it really hard, and say, you take an oath, you take a job, you're supposed to do that job. You're not supposed to start playing upstairs, downstairs insurance game when you have archives, materials that pertain to national security, the process of elections, So here we are, I lay this on the table so more people will have an understanding. It's very important for people to have an understanding, because I also filed the presidential candidate panel rights and on treason. So it's presidential candidate panel, and then you change the word depending upon the source area. Most of what I put out there and a little bit of publishing was treason. but that's not the only label. You change labels depending upon certain needs. Now, there are limitations, but they're extremely powerful. In other words, there's certain types of case areas that still belong in certain other courts, unless they're in mass rebellion. The moment they're in mass rebellion, you can claim authority. This is high authority area. Technically, a presidential candidate panel is something that can be reviewed by what? You look at the description, it gets reviewed by the Senate, basically. Read the Constitution, read the articles, and understand how that works. Read the minutes of Congress. So people get confused. They go, I can't find these numbers in the books. Which books are you looking at? Well, these law books. Those are lower court books. The reason that you don't see the numbers in the books is because those courts don't handle these types of matters. In many cases, it's fabric law. If you can convey the argument in a wording where you also have a translative understanding that you can quote a different type of a law or situation and go through a lower court, you can do that, but you don't have to. You do not have to abandon a proper labeling. And that's a lot of things that keeps happening. You have parties, they want to abandon the label. The actions of the federal court even. It's despicable what the federal court did in the filings. When I did the filings trying to get relief in federal court and what they did. And explain the situation. The situation is a Rico. It's a Rico situation. I have people shooting at me. My life's in danger. I apparently can't set up the archive and campaign headquarters without parties coming in committing violent attacks with baseball bats, with pipes. This is, in other words, denial of address location for any type of campaign activity or archive activity. This is a problem, and they're not understanding this. The court also doesn't understand about cyber crime, how it works. We got 1.4 billion, that's with a B, billion attacks a day. The court is not an expert in cybersecurity. So when they're telling you the methodologies of how we want you to do things, they don't know what they're talking about. They're ignorant. They're not experts. They consult with experts, but they expect other people to bring experts in. But by themselves, they're effectively ignorant. They have no professional training in cybersecurity. They sub it out to somebody else. So that means it's difficult to get a qualified comment and understanding when they're not experts in the field. I'm not slapping people, I'm straight out laying the facts out. These are the facts. So when you have people like me that it would depend on your opinion. Some people would consider me extremely high in knowledge, understanding of cybersecurity. But I'm going to tell everybody it's an issue. The area is so large. It's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling. You've got experts in all kinds of different areas to do different things. You've got all the national security. You've got the back doors, the permanent back doors in chips manufactured. This is when you end up with these huge problems. And it never ends. They're always trying to come up with a workaround, which is a temporary fix, to reconfigure an area instead of go to permanent designs that do not allow back doors. But see, then you wouldn't be able to spy on terrorists if you didn't have a back door. Think about that. So when you see all these documentaries about people getting spied on and their phone getting spied on, but they're after terrorists, but sometimes some bad things occur and other people get hurt, well, you're kind of sort of really in the territory of base understanding, and it gets more complicated from there. So when you have major players involved with major types of technology, you have people in court that scratch their head and they'll say, why don't you do that this way? And you're talking till you're blue in the face with people that aren't experts. It's an insult. It's an insult that the court insults you because they're not experts. They don't know what they're talking about. They have no tactical table experience to justify their attitudes. And they think they know it all. Well, you just have to do it this way, or this way. No, that's not the way it works. You see, for those of us who have to deal with being involved in the danger rodeo, There are other aspects, because to do it their way, they're going to endanger your health and your safety. They're going to take too long to get you compensation when they should do an immediate emergency summary judgment of a partial nature, and immediately do a till-tap. Immediately look at a case and say, yeah, this person's going to end up being owed money. Till-tap. They need something to work with. They need emergency management budget money. That's the way it works. If you go back constitutionally to see how all of that works, what happens in America? 1812 war, the British invade. You have people running around doing till-taps, giving them receipts, saying, here's a receipt. This is an IOU, basically. The government's going to pay you. We're at war. We've been invaded. Or we have mass insurrection and we need resources. This happens all the time. Fire departments, police agencies, they will use resources all the time. They will just take it. They'll just take it and use it all the time. I've read horror stories of people that were upset. They had a pool and water system designed to protect their house from fire, and the fire company came up and took all their water away, and then their house burned down. And they're like, I don't understand. I go way out of my way to protect my stuff, and then I'm stuck. Well, of course, the government has to pay for that. But, the idea at the time, the logic obviously was, we think we've got a good chance to get this fire out, or we have to slow it down because we don't want it to get next to this other facility, which would make it an extra big, huge problem. Maybe it's full of chemicals or whatever. So you have to make these judgment calls. So commandeering happens all the time. Fire, police. So when you set up presidential candidate panel and you're getting to the point where you have mass rebellion and you have the leaders that no longer support the people, they're no longer protecting the voters, they're not protecting the process of elections, you have to go through these, in the modern terms, we have to go through these really strange processes because the courts have been breached. Part of insurrection is dealing with rebellion and sabotage of political members that are impermeated in the court. This is not a joke. So the complexities of this are very difficult. Some lawyers in law could tell you the differences between getting to the right court and the right judge. And we do not have a system to eliminate bad judges. We really don't. We have a review system. We have some ethics systems, but it requires people to lean and say, hey, you got to deal with this, to force certain people to put it in their schedule. They're undersized. They don't have enough people to do the processes, and that's part of the big item. So that's what you got to deal with. So understanding where things are at and how we proceed from this point. At this point, Shirley Weber's a criminal. She's participated in multiple rigged elections. She's a criminal. California owes me money, and she won't credit the ballot fee. Well, you just have to find the money someplace. If the state's got my income 100% shut down, where's that money going to come from? Hello? These crimes are just ridiculous. And they're also ignoring other special mandates in the Constitution, dealing with insurrection. All costs are guaranteed by the United States government. So these people are absolutely ridiculous. In the emergency situations, the presidential candidate need only verbally proclaim. This is the obvious understanding to say, if they're in your presence, they've identified themselves, boom, it's done. If they've communicated with you in any way where it's verbal, it's a communication. That means by the telephone even. Now the purpose for this, the overall purpose of this is to reduce what? Reduce problems. Because why? You have invasion and insurrection. Reduce problems. That means there's a whole bunch of other stuff that goes with this. You don't need signatures, technically. This business you need 200,000. No. This is emergency measures situation, and you have to keep the continuity of elections running. So all of this extra fluff stuff that's prepared is not constitutional in certain circumstances. And this keeps getting ignored by rulers constantly. So aside from having to deal with that, you still deal with, well, nonetheless, I can do this. Here you go. By the way, we've done the paperwork. We're doing the paperwork. We got the signatures. We got people breaking in, stealing the signatures. We got people with weapons stealing the signatures. This other stuff, here's what we got, and so bottom line, we want the fee covered. You owe us money. Well, we don't know that we owe you money. Yeah, you do. You just verified. It's a 5-minute phone call. You've already been served. Julie, Shirley Weber. She's already been delivered a copy of the documents involving the emergency shutdowns. She knows what the temporary decided protocol has been. Okay, she knows that it's a man-made disaster, and in man-made disasters, anyone that makes a man-made disaster is automatically financially responsible for not only your losses, but your ongoing insurance. If you lose your insurance, or you have no money for insurance, they become your insurers. Mass entrapment probably pops into people's head all over the state. Yeah, that's true too. That's occurred. So the evidence is in her office. Your office has the previous records of when I did my last petition run. Last several petition runs. It's right there. Therefore, I'm owed money. Therefore, you pick up the phone. You have one of your people pick up the phone and ask the EED, why hasn't this guy been paid? It's just that simple. Conducted very, very phone calls. We're talking, they have in-house phone numbers that supposedly they're the only ones that have. Methodologies for communication in-house, and they're the only ones that have those. So they know those secure channels. And you have emergency situations. They must be equipped to respond in emergency situation. It's been deemed an insurrection. And they don't want to follow protocols. They don't want to do an investigation. It's a no-brainer. It's an absolute no-brainer. Call downstairs. Yeah, do you have records on this guy? Yeah, he witnessed a whole bunch of petitions. Bang, that's all we need. Okay. Yeah, this guy's owed money. And you can't get through to the ED. That's it. You can't get through. There's something wrong. Communications are shut down. It's called, if you're a judge, it's called rule from the bench. You have to make a field judgment. And the field judgment always must be in the correct forward course. It cannot be insurance upstairs, downstairs. You have to protect the continuity of government, the continuity of elections, the continuity of the people. So the judgment must be, grant the man money, put him on the ballot. Well, she refuses to do this. She refuses to participate. She refuses to turn over copies of information as evidence so it can be used as evidence to pursue Julie Sue. The AG's office says, no, we can't assist you in any way because we have to protect our employees that may have done something illegal. I says, even if they're a Russian spy? And they says, even if they're a Russian spy? I says, no, you don't. No, you're totally nuts. You're crazy at this point. You do not violate your oath. You do not violate the Constitution. You do not disenfranchise the voters because your job is to protect the voters. Your job is to not disenfranchise the voters. Your job is to continue the oath to the Constitution. And when a candidate comes up and says, this is a situation, this is what I need done, and they don't want to do it, they don't want to check it, they don't want to verify it. They don't want to verify it because they know where it's going to go. They already know that there's guilt there. There's already a problem there. So they're gonna try to divert you and say, why don't you try a compensation board? Well, you can't work with the compensation board. They never call you back. And the other thing is they also want you to sign protocol to agree not to press criminal charges. You can't do that. That's coercion. You're demanding coercion from a presidential candidate that's taken an oath that says that they will not violate their constitutional oath, nor will they give in to coercion. It's not allowed. And these people are going to bow their neck and invent policies that are absolutely illegal and continue to move forward with election rigging. This is called election rigging. So they rigged a recall election, keeping me off the ballot, and they perpetuated it, went longer and longer, creating huge problems. Huge problems. Huge security problems. Other violence, other problems. And none of these people want to pay me. None of these people want to do their job. And I'm under attack. We're talking an archive. We're talking what ends up happening. Artifacts. Artifacts older than the Constitution of the United States. Lost. 18 mobile broadcast RV archives. Computer analyst. 1 million people a day would have saw just 12 of them on the road in Los Angeles. Just 12 of them. But these people have every avenue of activity shut down. This is called, by definition, acts of war. Acts of war. This disqualifies them and anyone they support as candidates from running for office because they're musters. They're supporters and they're musters. They're effectively in coercion. So, the understanding that these people keep trying to avoid is the truth. The truth that they're in rebellion. So you have a lot of this light switch, on, off, back, forth, this party, that party. High ethics. High ethics are supposed to be the same standard regardless. Regardless. People are missing this stuff. Totally missing this stuff. So here we have a situation that now we get to do something new to this moment right here and now. Let's track back to Kamala Harris, who was an AG, who was already involved in multiple situations where she refused to do what? She was in dereliction of duty. She refused to protect a candidate being harassed. She refused to protect an archiver being harassed. She refused to protect the process of elections. But she took money from an opponent. There are numerous actions where parties were involving themselves in destruction of archive, lying and committing and making blatant theft. Again, Kamala Harris refusing to do her job, quoting some of these ridiculous policies. She's into it up to her neck because she has a longer previous history of attacking the archive and the campaign and the candidate. She's a participant. So, these people try to constrain things and invent new ways. Oh, we're going to invent a new way to do a new definition and call you something else. No, you can't do that. You can't do that. Archiver is an archiver is an archiver too. These people are responsible for the destruction of artifacts older than the Constitution of the United States. The punishment, Constitution articles, the punishment for these areas are death penalty. Death penalty areas. Oh, gotta take that.